Katy Conneely. Earlier this year, I was invited by the Oughterard Writers Group to come and talk to them and hear directly from their members about what the Writers Group means to them. Oughterard is a traditional village in the west of Ireland, nestled beside Lough Corrib, the largest lake in the Republic, at the start of the Connemara mountain range and only 26 kilometres from Galway city. It's also where I grew up and first experienced the joy and support of a local community. The Writers Group is an eclectic mix of poets, artists, retirees, young people, older people, a group that perhaps you wouldn't expect to spend an hour together every week, and yet they do. It was a pleasure to meet with them, hear their stories, and most importantly, their beautiful poetry and words. I think they are a perfect example of the importance of investing in your local community and the importance of art and the impact it can have on an individual's life. I started by talking to Pete Mullineaux, who is the facilitator of the group, to learn more about how they began and how it's evolved and grown over the years.
We started off as an intergenerational project and then developed an intercultural focus, linking people from different countries new to the area with local writers to share stories and write creatively together. Out of that came our first publication, Different Together, launched by Michael G. Higgins. Since then, the group has published several books representing members' work while continuing the connection with our local community, taking part in a number of intergenerational projects in local schools, most recently a storytelling and visual art collaboration with the primary school, resulting in a wonderful publication, Tell Me a Story. We've hosted numerous open workshops and held public readings for Bealtaine, Culture Night, the local Mayfly Festival, and National Poetry Day. We welcome everyone, and while there are people in the group who've been writing for years, we're always open for anyone new to join or just drop in and try it out. In fact, we frequently return to basics, reminding ourselves of the essentials of the art and craft of creative writing. We invite people writing in any form, poetry, stories, dramatic writing, non-fiction. We've even explored song and made a CD with poems set to music. What do we do when we meet? We explore and play with language, with words, find creative ways to express thoughts and feelings, discover ways of responding to the world around and within us, allow a voice for what is going on inside ourselves, make it audible so we can share it aloud with others. Myself, I was very lucky to have a mother who loved poetry and novels and drama, and then a succession of English teachers who inspired and encouraged. One reason for writing is to mark or make a note of things, put thoughts and feelings down before they disappear. A desire for permanence, which is true of our lives in general. We don't want to just fade away. We meet every Thursday at 11 a.m, both in the room and online, and we found this hybrid form of meeting works fine. We go on to around 12, creating, communicating, expressing, sharing. Throw in some tea and biscuits. What more could you want? I'd like to say how grateful I am to the Resource Centre for hosting us. I'm also hugely appreciative of the way the members of the group have taken on the load when it comes to things like grant applications, consulting printers, not to mention visual art skills in designing the covers and content of the wonderful books we've produced, and much more besides. This is an early poem from my first collection, Zen Traffic Lights, and it's called Wasting Away. Wasting away. We hope that some things cannot be erased. The Buddhist sees each sorry soul return, though most of it will have to go to waste. Hooked on progress, forever making haste, we gobble up, incinerate, and burn, believing some things cannot be erased. And for fear we may become debased, we cultivate improvement, seek to learn, though most of it will have to go to waste. But whether we're the chaser or the chased, much like a coin, depending on the turn, hoping some things cannot be erased, we look back at those footprints barely paced, ley lines of meaning wistfully discern, though most of it will have to go to waste. Thinking then of this life as but a taste of things to come, beyond our current concern, accepting we will one day be erased. We hope and pray that some things never go to waste.
Thanks again to Pete for his time. It's clear from listening to him how lucky his writers are to have him at the helm. I'm now going to step back for a little bit and let you hear from some of the members in the group and their work, starting with John Cronin.
Initially, I joined the group through the encouragement of my wife, who had attended a few sessions with Pete Mullineaux. I was a bit tentative and nervous, but gradually settled in. It took me a while to begin to hear what other people, poets, were saying about themselves through their poems. Up to that point, poetry was a solitary pursuit, an engagement with the written word, but to hear it spoken aloud was a different experience. I remember with fondness the voices of Chris Mayhew and Margaret Larmony, who have since passed on. It still surprises me how much Pete can hear in one take. And it strikes me that attention to the words is the key. You have to get out of the way. Casting my mind back to my teens and early 20s, I can recall the experience of really hearing a poem, what the poet was saying. And 50 years later, I can still enjoy these poems and poets. Dylan said, "A poet is a naked person. Some people call me a poet." I always liked that insight. This live experience of poetry or art is one of the great unifying experiences of life. Then there's the experience of writing your own poetry too, when the initial phrase comes to you and the poem evolves and surprises you. Then there is the working on it and perhaps finishing it. Some French poet said a poem cannot be finished, but abandoned, or words to that effect. Anyway, it's a quiet joy to read, hear, or write poetry. You discover you're not alone, but part of a whole. It's not unlike the experience of love. It's a poem in memory of my sister. She died roughly a year ago, and I was asked to do it as a communion reflection. It's called "The World is a Different Place." There are moments of communion, and there are moments of grace and moments of love. After a shower, rain mottles the window pane. There is sunlight in the garden, shadow and light, a whir of wings, a bird in flight alighting, coming to rest in the invisible recesses of the heart. My heart is open to you in love. May that love be commensurate with the love you shower upon your loved ones. How even in a state of coma, a smile plays upon your lips at the mention of your beloved Jessie's name. Our hearts are open to you in love. There is the lovely realization that it is the same, the one love. Yes, Paula, there are moments of love, there are moments of grace, and there are moments of communion. And now, Paula, you are forever in love.
My name is Barbara Dunne. I am a multidisciplinary artist, writer and poet. I am originally from the Carlow-Laois border, and I know it's a cliche, but even as a teen I wanted to be a writer. I bought my first book of poetry when I was 16, and I started writing poems in my early 20s. I moved to Galway via Dublin to study art in Clúnmhara. After graduating, I concentrated my energies on parenting and teaching art, mainly to children, but to adults as well for many years. I had 2 more children and continued my art practice, and I also was writing reviews of exhibitions, and they were being published online and in journals. So that was my writing at that time. Around 2011, I became a single parent, and a year and a half later, our lives changed forever when their dad died. He got ill and died. We had to move house shortly after his death, and that's how we came to be living in Mullen, County Galway. It was after these overwhelming changes that I began to write again, mostly poems. I kept a journal and wrote, but I was afraid of showing my work in case it was rejected. But something shifted, and my New Year's resolution in 2018 was to join a writers group of class. I did some research and decided that the Oughterard Writers Group was where I would dip my toe first. It seemed much less intimidating than a formal class. And plus Pete, I felt he was the draw as well as a facilitator. I'd met him and I kind of went, you know what, I'd start there. I still remember my first time sitting around the table of friendly faces. I was very shy and very intimidated by them all. But I read my poem and the earth did not swallow me up. I came back the next week and the next, and slowly my confidence grew. And by the end of that year, I was at my first book launch that included a selection of my poems, which was amazing, actually. During the pandemic, I had the opportunity to both write and paint almost every day. It was during this time that I began to get published more in journals and newspapers and really just give more time to those. So why do I keep writing? Why do I keep writing? It's a compulsion. It's like a vocation. It's a journey and I'm still on mine. It's a way of expressing myself with the intention of connecting to others through my words. I have discovered that a piece of writing or a painting, they're not really truly finished until they've been experienced through the senses of others. So I write in order to connect. By being a member of the writers group, I found the support of like-minded people who unfailingly have offered their honest and thoughtful observations of my work. I have had the opportunity to grow and learn as a writer. I have had the space to experiment and make mistakes. The encouragement of the group has been inspiring. This is a poem called Dunne. It was published in Drawn to the Light Press this year. Dunne. Thistledown day trippers hurry to catch the ferry out to the island, watching the cliffs swell and shrink. Sea birds circle as we make our way out onto the limestone pavement platter buttressing the shore. The sea waves with white fingers before retreating into hazy azure. Ochre grasses cushion the sharp edges of the burn. You've never been before, and you gaze in amazement at the barren landscape, littered with treasures, harebell, devil's bit scabious, knapweed, and a lone thistle. Past the herd of cattle that young Italian warned us about in broken English, we stop and sit, close to the cairns. On a rocky shelf facing the sea, I heave the skeletons from my wardrobe, heavy mahogany with a beveled mirror. My words slip through the cracks under our feet, filling the empty gap of decades of misunderstanding. Suddenly, a fish twists in the rolling deep below us, like the salmon on an old 10-pence piece, flashing like a new penny. Thank you.
Living in a city lurk, I know what that means. I walk around for an hour and then I retreat. Have a list in my pocket of what I'm meant to do.
That piece of music was Living in the City by local Oughterard musician Katy Conneely. Back to our writers now, and next up we have Geri Slevin.
I became widowed a few years ago. I had 2 young sons and I was looking for companionship in a sort of a creative space. Designer by trade, if you wish, but that's work. And then I had this really good friend called Margaret Larmy, a lot older than me, but we knew each other for going back a long time. And she said that there was a great writing group in Oughterard Village, and she said, why don't you come and try it? And so I did, and I stayed. I'm nothing like anybody else in the group in the sense they're all great poets. So I spent a lot of the time just listening and enjoying the different ideas that were put out by Pete Mullineaux, whom I also knew in another life. And so when she said he was anchoring it, I thought it will be good because our paths have crossed in my professional life. So I thought, it'll be probably very good. And so, I've enjoyed it. It's sort of like been part of the community and in a committed way, like showing up, and I had the time, and I really enjoyed it. And then Margaret passed away, and that I found that very difficult, because one of the reasons I went there was I used to look forward to meeting her, and we had a mutual time together then, shared space. So I wrote a little poem for her. So I just called it, and this is from the most non-poet in the group. It's called For Margaret. Life is too short. I'll miss you at the table of words, your warm, soft voice, your gentle smile. I hope you enjoyed my singing as much as I enjoyed your poetry. I'm not looking forward to looking across the table to your empty chair. I'll miss you at the table of words. So I do still miss her. She's a really lovely person that passed through my life. And so I don't know, one day I just wrote that, because I did for weeks and weeks. I'd come and she always sat at the same side of the table, and she was just gone. And she's not the only person we lost in the group, but I suppose she's the one person that meant a lot to me in her own peculiar way, if you wish. But I definitely love the eclectic mix of people in the group, the ideas. I love the poetry they write and the different poems we look at. So, yeah. But I've also enjoyed the company and listening to ideas, to something that I would never usually do or not even really consider. And so it's fascinating, especially when it gives an exercise with one topic or a prompt, and then you hear how many different ways that's expressed, which I find fascinating, because you get a chance for people to explore it. And the group is very open-minded. It's a non-judgmental, so you can really explore where people's, and they can put it out there on the table where the idea came from, and that can be such an eye-opener. Do you know what I mean? Because I think if you know what's behind something, particularly poetry, gives you greater insight into the depth of the words. At least it does for me. Do you know what I mean? So if I have a chance in this, I'd like to read one more poem.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit longer now than Margaret, but I spent a long time flying in and out from Oughterard to Clifton on the N, famous 59, before they did this new roads work. So one day, as I was driving, this came to me. On the N59, which is the main road from Galway City to Clifton. So Clifton, 17k, it's 9:52, and I'm like the Mad Hatter. I've 7 minutes. The cloud shadow moves across the pin on my right. It is also moving at a clip, like it too is late. Perhaps the universe is in Mad Hatter mode. Everything is running late. Piles of grey gravel outside the quarry. Dark grey shadows scurry across the mountain tops, but the land is a silver grey, at odds with the autumnal landscape. A mobile telephone mast, shorter and sleeker than the ESB pylon. An island floats on the lake to my left, incongruously wrapped in verdigris netting. The reds of the prickly hedgerows, the berry-laden bushes, the last of the warm yellow firs, an orange triangular road sign, men at work ahead, clocking 80 on the N59, 9:59, hurtling through the narrow tree tunnels splashed with fuchsia. Another warning sign, bends ahead, the newly painted central white line on the blacktop. Around the next bend, all the colours lose their sharpness. The sky is leaden grey, and the sheet of rain slaps the windscreen with a whop. 10:03 on Clock On, in one piece, but late.
Greetings. My name is Diana Vandekamp, and I'm originally from Pasadena, California, and I've lived in Ireland now for 6 years, and I've been in the writers group for about 4 years. And my father-in-law, who's also part of the writers group, Jack McCann, he invited me to join, and I just fell in love with the whole group and the ethos and the people, and yeah, it's been a real inspiration. I've been writing for pretty much my whole life, but didn't take it very seriously. And so the prompts every week kind of helped give me a bit of discipline and regularity to my writing, even though I've certainly gone off the rails sometimes and not always followed the prompts, and sort of written whatever was in my heart or head at the time, like short stories or essays or or whatever came to mind, but it's mostly been poetry. You can just really go anywhere with it, which is so freeing. The deadline is crucial for me because that's really sort of forced me to get my thoughts and words together. And I wouldn't say it's competitive with the other writers at all, but you just sort of want to like meet them at their level. And they're so talented. Everybody is so talented and at different levels of writing, which is also really, really interesting. For one of our workshops, I got to experience someone writing their first poem ever, which was so exciting. The community here has been so welcoming and incredible, and moving country, to be honest, was a little bit stressful and a little bit scary to kind of figure out where you belong. So I've been really lucky to stumble into some incredible community groups. Probably my favorite is the Writers Group, if I'm going to be completely honest. And I've made friends, lifelong friends, and inspirations for the rest of my existence. So I just feel really blessed to have been lucky enough to be welcomed by this group. My poem is called Writer's Paradise by Diana Van de Kamp. When the mind is still as a summer's midnight, ink bursts like fireworks. The warmth of words wash over the page, glowing splashes of light for eyes that you haven't met yet. The pen is a vessel for play, for brain-bearing fruit, to be picked when ripe, then gobbled like strawberries, juices running down hands in the messy joy of design. You can step away, you can come back. It is a faith-filled journey that the thoughts you think will form from the formless, molding your masterpiece. Deeply connected to the creator with an effortless scribble, that is the magic moment when the piece becomes a poem.
My name is Kathleen Furey and I'm a painter and a printmaker. I'm originally from Galway, but I've lived in Oughterard for the past 35 years. I always liked English at school, and I still have some of my school books, and in particular one called Junior Voices that I still read all the time. Galway was a very lovely place to live and very creative when I was living there in the 1980s, and poets and artists and writers were part of the same social circles, and poetry seemed part of everyday life and very accessible. I used to write a little bit then, but eventually I focused more on visual arts, although I always felt regretful that I didn't make time to write in those intervening years. So I heard about the Writers Group in Clan, and I joined in 2012. I knew of its existence, and I knew Pete, who's the facilitator, since my Galway days, but I was still a bit apprehensive about joining, an established group. But Jess, who was another member of the group and an artist, said that she would join too, so we decided to go together up to the meetings in the Clan Resource Centre. And the group were, and they really are, very welcoming and encouraging, and I felt, at ease straight away. I'm still amazed and delighted at some of the things I've written over the years, and I think that's really important. Like just the very act of showing up to write each week, it really has led to insights and to memories and a lot of, sort of a clarity and that's been really helpful in other parts of my life. And then, with the group, I really like the discipline of the homework and trying different forms like acrostics and villanelles and ballads, songs and haikus. It's almost like working out a puzzle. And I enjoy the homework. And then I find that writing is a way of responding to life and to reflect on what's important at the moment. It kind of comes out in the writing. But the group, they really are great, very supportive. And Pete's responses and feedback to all of our work is really insightful and helpful. And we also learn a lot from each other. And we've become friends over time. So I suppose the visual artwork I do reflects on how we discover traces of people who lived before us and how we interpret the stories and histories. And this ties in with the poem I'm going to read. It's called Bridge, and it's about the stone bridge in Oughterard, which is 200 years old. And we were doing the Golden Mile Walk, which was devised by Mary Kine of the Heritage Group. And one of the stops is at the stone bridge near the church. And as we were looking down into the flowing water, a friend who was with us said he had a colleague who was interested in bridges, and he pointed out some of the architectural features. I knew it was built in 1820 by Alexander Nemo, who was a Scottish engineer, and it was part of his road improvement scheme between Galway and Clifton. So I did some other research, and the description of the bridge from the National Built Heritage Service website provided some of the words for the poem. So I suppose this is a tribute to the little bridge. To quote the article, its high quality of construction allows it to continue to fulfill its original function in the 21st century. And I love that idea of all of the people who have used the little bridge in the 200 years. Bridge. When Nemo built the little bridge at the ford in the river, could even he have foreseen its usefulness? For 200 years, 3 arches with tulle voussoirs and raised keystones have borne the weight of B&Coney cars, bicycles, stagecoaches and carriages, tour buses and caravans, donkeys and carts, horses and traps, and GB cars on motoring holidays. V-shaped cutwaters ease the flow of the Owen River between limestone piers over the sulphured riverbed, first to the lake and then on to the sea at Galway. Our children have walked its gentle incline to school, to play, to the waterfall that quietens the waters meandering through our town. We must protect you, your hammer-dressed stonework, parapets and crenellated copings, your gunnel soffits with rendered plinths for arch springing, your river piers with pyramidal caps on rendered bases, your limestone, cool on a summer's day, your promise of Connemara.
Such beautiful words and stories from the group there, and there's more to come. But before we get to that, I also spoke with Belinda Mullen, who is the coordinator at the Clan Resource Centre in Oughterard. This is where the Writers Group was first established and where they meet each week, if not meeting online. Belinda was able to give great insight into the work that the centre does and the role of the Writers Group within that.
My name is Belinda Mullen and I am the coordinator of Clan Family Resource Centre. We're based here in Oughterard and we cover not only Oughterard, we cover the whole of Connemara, to be honest. When I came here 10.5 years ago, the Writers Group were then one of the oldest groups that had been established, and the development officer that we have in post now would agree with me in saying that they're now quite independent. Where we come in is that initially pre-COVID, we would have always given the space to the Writers Group here in the Clan Centre on Station Road in Oughterard, where they would all meet together. They would meet for 2 hours. They would, as I said, put a few euro by every week that was going into their account, so that they always had money to help support the payment of their facilitator, which would be Pete Mullineaux. Over COVID, they moved to Zoom. And it was great because it meant that people still had that connection socially once a week. And we had people like that would be linking in from the UK that would have been part of the group. And that was brilliant to keep that connection going for him as well and his wife. They meet every week on a Thursday still, and my role is in supporting them is to set up the Zoom link. Our other role then would be to help them with completing forms for applications. And the reason our support is required is that we have the insurance, where if they are meeting here on the premises, they're covered by our public liability. We also help them in that Patricia organises their bank account and we do their accounts. Their accounts are audited with ours on an annual basis. As I said, they're quite independent. And the other thing that they need from us, that they're under a company. And when they are under a charity, when they're applying for funding, that's really important because it increases the chances of a positive outcome. So other than that, They are one of our best and I suppose most highlighted group because they have put together a number of books. They're doing this podcast and they've done other projects with the schools. They're really, really integrated into the community, the writers group. They're known for everything. And it's really like Clan are very proud to be part of them, you know, because as I said, they're an amazing bunch of people. Amazing because they all had different careers and are tied together through their love now for creative writing, for putting poetry together. And again, like we have plastic surgeons, we have ex-teachers, artists, and yet they've come together with this common love. And their writing is it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And I have to say, as the coordinator from here, I'm extremely proud that Clan are still part of them. I said they did a great book with the school, and that was a really successful piece of work. I went to the launch of it, which was held in the school, and the young kids that participated in it was there. And it was also, apart from a writing piece, I would have viewed it as an intergenerational piece. And again, something very positive for the community. So, you know, we still get people that want to join them. The word is out there about them all the time. As I said, now we do miss that they don't come as much in person as I said, pre-COVID, it was, you know, a weekly thing here on a Thursday. The car park would be full. The riders were here. Made sure there was plenty of biscuits in for them. But now, I don't know, is it good or is it bad? They're not here as much, but they still have their weekly meeting, and they still have, like, one of them was away in Portugal, and it was great because he was still able to link in. So as I said, they're a very dedicated group, and I think apart from being a group, they've all become really good friends, and they've all become informal social supports for one another. And I suppose in relation to Clan itself, our work also, we work to reduce social isolation, and the writers group, whether it's on Zoom or in person, has helped us with that goal.
Thanks again to Belinda. Now back to the main event, our writers.
My name is Sarah and I'm a new mom. I'm an occasional writer and a very enthusiastic cook. I live by the sea, but I come to Oughterard because I work in the credit union here, and that's how I found out about the Oughterard Writing Group. I've always loved writing as a form of expression. It's been always like an itch that I need to scratch, and always in my head that I need to write. I have a degree in English and a master's in journalism, and I've written pieces for local papers and online and radio over the years, but I work in a different area now, and life has got so busy that I am not really writing creatively anymore. So ironically, having a baby was the break that I needed. As many people know, women lose themselves in early motherhood, and it's very hard to find time for things you love. So I joined the group as a gift to myself and also for my daughter. I want to raise her to live a life full of art and self-expression and being brave, even when you've had no sleep and you're staring at a blank page. The group has been like truly amazing, and actually it hasn't been writing again that is the gift that I was looking for. It's actually turned out to be the group. They are warm and encouraging and you can do no wrong. So thank you to my fellow writers. And I will leave you with a memory and a great quote from a journalist here in Galway who was a lecturer of mine, John Cunningham. He used to say to us, just write the damn thing. So that's what I'm trying to do. So this is Boiled. Boiled. Here comes sleep. An alluring, delightful, heavy cloud. Grasping her breath and setting the pace. She relaxes and melts like butter on the side of an oven fresh bake. Reluctantly captained by the cousin of death, she sleeps. A heavenly refresh and break from her family. She finally loosens her hands, releasing steam, fumes of control, and a questionable grip on reality. Boiled from the day she takes half the bed, and a vast domestic escape. She exhales, purring with the force of a seasoned and slowly boiled kettle. The ritual sets a fresh brew and quickly wipes up today's mess. No choice but to stay put, as sleep has her now. For half the day she hates it and loves it in equal measures. Her restless grudge of rest. A poor dancer, yet she tries so hard. But she gives in and forgives nightly, on her side and soft in the navy light.
My name is Jack McCann. I was born in Rush in County Dublin, then lived in Mullineaux since the age of 6. I went to O'Connell Secondary School in Dublin. That's on the North Circular Road. And then I went to UCD where I did medicine, and my training hospital was the Mater Hospital. I specialised in plastic surgery and trained in both Ireland, England and Australia. I became a consultant plastic surgeon in Galway in 1989. I was the first consultant plastic surgeon there. I worked till I retired in 2010. I always dabbled in poetry, but took it seriously just before I retired by joining a creative writing class in the hospital under poet and dramatist Maura Holmes. I later joined Oughterard Writers Group under the guidance of Pete Mullineaux. I have published 3 poetry books and am involved in multiple anthologies of both writing groups. When an idea comes to me, I have to write it down and then develop it until finished. I have also written some plays. I've written a poem about my grandfather, which I will now recite. It is called A Knock on the Door. Knock, knock, knock. 22nd of November, 1920. Knock, knock, knock. 1 a.m. Jack McCann, you IRA bastard, come out or we'll burn you out. Voices English, alcohol soaked, the tans, trigger happy, license to kill. A traitor has spoken on this bloody Sunday night. 2 babies crying, a third, my father, turns in his mother's womb. His cry unheard. I am coming down, trousers on, boots on, shirt loose, jacket looser. A last hug for his wife and my father. A soothing word, a farewell look. We will pray for you, Jack, from his in-laws. As he rapidly descends the old wooden stairs under the thatch. Where is young brother James now? Lying in a grave near the Somme? Died fighting for their king and country? Now they are fighting in our land, as they have done for 700 years. Is it back to Frongok, or a free passage to Van Diemen's land? No, it was his neighbour's field, bulleted and bayoneted, on his knees, from where he went to his maker. I have his name, I have his dreams, I have his gold pocket watch from his comrades on his wedding day. Have I his courage? Now a cross stands where he fell, to remind how he was crucified, erected 45 years after his death by his comrades and friends. Now each knock on the door awakens the ghosts, brings the voices. Come out, or we will burn you out.
My name is Phillippa Maguire, and I joined the Writers Group a good while ago now, basically so that I could get confidence in my voice. I was trying to find my voice, and writing in the Writers Group has really expanded how I use language and how I feel about it. And poetry. I mean, I never really was into poetry. I love fiction and but poetry now, writing it and reading it, it brings like something that you learn something about yourself, about the soul of yourself. So that's why I keep in touch with all the others, and every week you hear something new that will just get you excited about something, and somebody had written something and you be going, oh, how do they say it that way, So it's just like, that's what it's for me. That's why I keep coming. It's exciting and interesting. So you get this hour of words and ideas, and that they set you off on other ideas. In a way, it's like being able to express yourself and somebody listening to you at the same time, and you listening, and to have that as a circle. It really is important to expand your writing, I think, yeah. I'm reading this piece, and it's the longest poem I've ever written in my whole life, and I'm going to dedicate it to the Claddagh Watch for all the people who walk the bridge. So I'll start. She feeds the rats at O'Brien's bridge. Red fire oozes, she explodes into raucous voice. We are all God's creators, my mission to love the unloved. As the rats scratch, she places her porridge, feeding the itching, scraping mass of pilgrim takers scrummaging to jump the tide. When she leaves, there is a silence, a lake of porridge married to the bins, and in the light, only a tripping of long tails waiting for the chips and piss of human takers who wobble, hands laced in white powder, vomiting up their party time. In the canal, the lone hooker waits, sharing her light to those that flow from Monroe's. Tattered jeans and blotted minds stagger, bumble and flounder, reeling under the prattle of high heels. They seek the taxi of an asylum seeker. Soft-spoken, small, weary man talks to the Claddagh Watch as they try to persuade him that life is worth living and addiction can be fought and that the mind is free to live, but where? Only in the clouds do those words matter. Pain emanates, surrounding him in a place where darkness is simplest. A blanket, a cardboard box, a doll for wasted foxy dreams of peace and crack cocaine to disappear again. Down Nemo's pier, lime green heels struggle to carry her weight, pouring down stumbling legs, tears trip. No love here tonight or any other night. She falls, not caring anymore. Light floods the water as she finds the shadows to touch the flow. It's grand, she whispers. It's all grand, for I was never good enough. In the air, Báidín Eileamín comes to mind. The cold holds her now. I know for sure I'm inside a play, inside a Martin McDonagh play. The pulse of darkness spews, hugging all as blood flows out the head of a boy, kicked stupid to sedate the screaming. Kick his head in, kick his head in. Wolves of torment tearing life, filtering away. Down a Spanish arch, empty cans waltz among the seagulls who fight and strive to get the last grease-soaked chip. Among the papers, urine and skins lies a red rose, pulverized. I am on the edge of loneliness, watching the river calling me to fly, knowing I will never die this way, as Mossy turns and says, it's hard, her life, to feed the rats. Her mission totally misunderstood. Her life's work heroic. Emma squirms her face and has a question. Have you anything better to be doing than be feeding those rats that creep and crawl up along and scare us all? And I think it's magnetic forces of living inside a blue ball in space between swan and grave. Yes, says Anna, a swan song. As the edges move between us, we head across Wolftown Bridge. A tone for the wolf-loving. I stop. I see you standing there. Your grin mirrors mine. I run to you. Will you say it? I nod. You are the insanity of my heart, my landscape of confusion, of pure longing to save the memory of touch. Our dark, brooding river that is tripped and fallen between wave and storm lies dormant, untouched by the stars around us, who yearn to dance. Your eyes hold mine, and the green flecks dissolve. I look at the space that once we walked, but you are gone, gone so far that rainbows fail to find the gold that once was you.
Living in a city, and it's like you've just met. Photos and a feeling you might just forget.
Music there again by Katy Conneely with his song Living in the City. Jess Walsh was the next writer who spoke to me.
I've always been an artist and a photographer, and I was a bit later coming to poetry. Well, our mum introduced my sister and I to poetry when we were very young. She used to read us the Puffin Book of Verse, and then we read it ourselves to her. And one of the poems that we loved was the one about Matilda who told lies and who burned. And we practically had to have that every night. It was a very cautionary tale, but somehow we loved it. That was by Hilaire Belloc. Later on then, there were some poems I really liked. And because I went to elocution classes, I used to have to learn poems. So I loved The Listeners by Walter Glenamare. That was just a lovely, mysterious poem. But I did always think that poems should rhyme. And I discovered definitely that wasn't true when I learned about the haiku. I got very, very fond of the haiku and used to write quite a lot of them. The haiku is a Japanese form of writing, ancient, and was mainly about nature and had just 17 syllables, 5, 7 and 5. And I think the reason I liked it so much is it was so short, because I always seemed to be doing something else, and I loved the quickness of it. I actually think it's a great way of introducing children to poetry because it's very good fun. I came to live in Oughterard from Dublin in 2008, and I heard then about the poetry group from my friend Margaret Larmony, whom I'd known all my life, and she just absolutely adored being part of the group. I'd actually love to read a little poem of hers. She's gone, she's left us now, gone to another realm. I'd love to read this short poem. It's called Portrait of New Life. In baby Joseph's voyage of discovery, his little hand holds up a brand new wonder. Still new enough to a world of light, the sheen of it on his right temple mirrors the lustre of the joy and wonder inside and out in this, his newest revelation. I just really like that poem, and it always reminds me of Margaret. So Margaret had been talking about it, and then Kathleen and I were friends, and on our walks down the Pier Road we'd always say, should we join the writers group? And we were a little bit daunted, but we did join it, and it was a great thing to do. Even on the first day we were made so welcome. Pete was so encouraging, and I remember thinking, he's such a fantastic listener. And he gave us a prompt, just a word, and we just sat there and we wrote, and I discovered I could do it. Very simply, but it was great. And so we've continued on there since then, way back in 2010, I think. I find with the writers group, we've had so many great opportunities. The first book that I remember that I was involved with was called By the Lake. And we collaborated with Oughterard, which I was and am a member of. And we had an exhibition and we wrote a book with the writers group. It was just a lovely book and a lovely experience. And so, of course, we've gone on to do a good few different books. And the one I think I have enjoyed most is the last one we did during COVID, which was Tell Me a Story, with the children in 4th class in the National School. And that was so much fun. We each shared our story, the beginning of our story, with 3 or 4 of the children in the school. And there were 9 different stories. And, it was wonderful. I think I would really have liked to have been one of those children.
Fantastic.
But we could never have done that without the support we got here from Clan and from the GRETB and from Galway County Council, who have given us the money to do this. So we're very lucky. This is a haiku, a couple of haiku actually put together, just because I like them so much. They don't have a title, just haiku will do. So, miraculously, colour paints footprints everywhere with splashes of magic, brightening our lives, gently filling the dark spaces left open by fear. In spite of everything, our world continues to bloom. Beauty reigns supreme.
My name is Tim Kershaw. I joined the Oughterard Writers Group 5 or 6 years ago. Home is a small farming village in England, but I've been coming to Oughterard for 40 years now with my Irish-born wife Nikki. Her family connections with this place go back at least as far as the 1820s. I'd written OK poetry on and off for years, but it's only since I joined the group that it's become a proper part of my life. Our tutor, Pete Mullineaux, is wonderfully astute and perceptive. He and the members of the group are the most welcoming, encouraging people you could hope to meet. Based in England, I could only join the meetings a few times a year. COVID changed that. Meetings moved on to Zoom, and I've been able to join in almost every week since, becoming very much part of the group rather than an occasional visitor. There's a real feeling of belonging now, of being part of a very special group of people. With the pandemic in the background, we're able to meet in person again, but we've kept Zoom too, so that as many as possible can attend, and that's worked out well. The group's developed beyond the poem a week format, as Pete's encouraged us to write short stories or short pieces for radio and stage. We've had workshops with stimulating exercises in writing, reading and speaking. We've published books of our poems, and best of all, we've had fun producing a book of stories for children with enthusiastic contributions in words and pictures from the children at the local school. I like to think that it's done wonders for my poetry. I'm writing more and sometimes better than I ever was. The weekly prompt is a challenging but welcome discipline, bringing out the best in all of us. We're able to share our thoughts and feelings with real warmth and acceptance. And here's a poem I wrote about an orchard. The hedge's hollow holds me, basketed under its branches' tangle. I watch through a patchy screen of backlit foliage, green and luminous. Light sweat sits salty on my lips. Save for a sudden flap and flutter as pigeons tread a courting dance, all's quiet in the rows and ranks of the orchard's apple tree clones. I close my eyes and doze. And when I wake, I hear the hedge alive with drowsy sounds and tiny scurries. 2 ambling flies, electric green, explore an arching bramble. Beetles in ribbed and lustrous armour quest through the twisted twigs and tunnelled litter of dead leaves, where threads of fungus twine white from the dark earth. My lair is laced by spiders, my hedgy shade scented with the freshness of new green and old brown mellow mustiness, warmed by a dappled sun. I feel a touch, light as an eyelash. A wood mouse nudges my startled toe, regards me, eye to bright eye, and passes on. The day begins to dim, and now the rooks in their hundreds, calling and cawing, pass low above me in a ragged 1,000-bomber raid, as if the evening's darkening dome is spattered with shifting glimpses of black infinity beyond. The rook's roost beckons in the branches of high beeches. From nearby coppiced hazels, wood smoke scent and laughter draw me too, back to the campfire, back to conviviality.
What a beautiful note to end with. I learned a huge amount about the importance of community groups through meeting with the Oughterard writers. If you've been thinking about writing and are hesitant to try, let this be your sign to give it a go. Start writing today. Investigate if there are local writing groups in your locality. If not, why not contact your local resource centre and ask about setting one up? Who knows, perhaps a few years down the line you'll be celebrating your first publication. My sincere thanks to Pete and everyone involved. It was inspiring, enlightening, moving, and simply just great fun. The Writers Group would like to thank Galway County Council, the GRETB and the Clan Resource Centre for their support over the years. This podcast is dedicated to all Oughterard Writers Group members, past and present. Thanks again and take care.